Hello, everyone, and welcome to Student Forum's School User Training. My name is Jesse Rojas, and I am a Customer Success Manager here with Campus Logic. I have been in the education field for about 10 plus years in various roles with financial aid, academics, and enrollment. For today's agenda, we are going to discuss different types of workflows that you can choose to work through as an institution. We are going to go over requesting transactions and viewing the ICER. We will talk about transaction statuses and go over what the different ones mean and how that applies to you. We will discuss the student view and how you can see what the student sees. You're able to navigate through their screen and help them out efficiently if they are calling in or in front in your office. We'll talk how you can waive different tasks depending on how you choose to view the task. We will discuss uploading to a document, so what that will look like. We will go over the file review and how to complete that. We'll also discuss rejecting documents and what that'll look like for you and how you can truly communicate to that student what is needed from them. We are going to go over the different discrepancies that you may see when you're reviewing a student's file. We're going to show you how you can request additional documents if need be. We're also going to show you the difference between Smart File and Full File Review. So this is where you will be doing your corrections. We'll go ahead and go over that process as well. We are going to discuss the multiple documents indicator and what that means to you. We will discuss the AGI calculation, the household alert, the admin override button, and lastly, we'll go over support. So transaction type statuses. So below are the different types of statuses that the transaction may be within. So with student forms, you can see here we have the collecting documents status. This is what the status is with the student. We're waiting for those students to upload those documents and we're collecting all of them from them. Reviewing uploaded documents. So this student has submitted all of their tasks. There's nothing else needed from them. They click that finish button. If you recall, in the student webinar, there was a big green finish button that the student will have to push as soon as they're done with everything. Once they push that button, it goes into reviewing uploaded documents. So once all documents have been reviewed and completed by the school, it will go into a reviewing file status. And then once it's complete, it'll go into two different statuses depending on the situation with the student. If the student did have some corrections that need to be processed, it will go into processing correction status. If there was no corrections that were needed from that student, it will go into a verified status. Now, depending if they did have corrections and those corrections did come back when that subsequent ICER comes in, it may go into a recollecting documents, meaning that there may be some additional documentation needed from them depending on what was done to the file. And lastly, we have expired. So you are able to expire a transaction. This may happen if a student no longer attends your institution and you want to remove them from the workflow. There is a way to expire them, and you can talk to your customer success manager if that is something that you are interested in. But once you do expire them, it will be in an expired transaction status. All right, we are going to jump into a demo. Let me pull that up here. All right, so when you first log into Student Forums as an administrator, this is what you will see. So it might look a little bit different because you will have your school logo here at the top, and you'll also have your school colors. So that'll be the only difference, but everything else is going to look the same for you. When you do log in, there may be sometimes where you see this blue bar here. If you see this blue bar, that means that there was an update that's been done to Student Forums, maybe an enhancement that was done. So I do recommend that if you ever see this blue bar, clicking on it, what that will do is take you to our release notes, and from here you'll be able to read exactly what was changed. So if you click on the latest one, It tells you everything, so there's some fixes that were done. It might not be anything major, might not be anything that you may notice at all, but it does give you some information on what was completed. If you don't want to see that blue bar anymore, you can go ahead and exit out of that. And then we go into our different workflows. So from here, we do have file review. This is when the student hits that finish button. So when and only they hit that finish button. The get next here, get next file, gives an FAO access to the next file or document with the oldest aging file. So first in, first out. Clicking that will give you that. If you click on view all here, this is where you'll be able to do some filtering, kind of look through students. Right now, you'll see we do have some completed students that you can see the different statuses, reviewing uploaded documents, reviewing file. So you will see all those students who are in this workflow in here. Most of the time, you'll see a lot more than this. But here you can look through different transaction statuses. So if you want to see who's already been completed, you can look through that. You can filter through the aid year. So if you're working with a couple of different aid years, that's something that you can filter through. And then if we show advanced filtering, here is where you can kind of filter through either alpha split by typing in the letter of the last name. So let's say you're working on R's, you would type in R, and then it would pull up every student associated with R and their last name. You can even search the student by first or last name if you're looking for a specific student. You can search by date ready and status date. You can also search by student ID. So just another way to kind of give you a workaround as far as how you work as an institution. The document review workflow, this is when a student completes an individual task. So if you recall on our student experience training call, when we were going through each student task, we were working as a student, we were presented with that submit button. As soon as that student hits that submit button, it goes into the document review flow. So it is possible for you to work a partial completed file. Let's say you're all caught up with all those full file reviews that are coming into file review, and you need something to do, so you can come into the document review, and you can work those files so that they're being reviewed, so that when the student does complete everything, you are then able to just complete the rest of the files that were submitted. So this is get next document works as first in, first out, the same as get next file. And then you can view all and search through different documents. You can kind of look through that. So here it'll show just individual documents. There's no particular order with the student, but it will show every document that they've submitted. So it's kind of nice. Some schools use this if you have a student worker that's in your office and you're trying to have them review some files, but you don't want them to do a full file review. You don't want them to do corrections. You just want them to review some sort of files. You can do that. We also have a document exclusion feature in the settings that you can exclude some documents like maybe a social security number or a birth certificate or a card. You don't want them to see that information because it's PII. You can exclude that from the document review flow if you have like a student worker working through that. So we give you a couple of ways to review documents, review the full file, however you see fit and however works best for your institution. Document retrieval. So once you complete a review on a file and it moves into a verified status, all the documents the student has completed in the transaction will go into this document retrieval. So it goes into a zip file for you to keep track of those documents. So it kind of acts like an imaging system as well. So it will remain in this flow as long as you use student forms or you go in and download those documents. Once you do download those documents, they are removed after 14 days from the list. But however, you can still find the documents by searching through the student. And if you truly need another copy of that, contact your CSM and we can get in touch with our development team to see if we can pull that list for you. appeals review. So if you're a school that is using SAP or PJ, once your student completes that SAP or PJ and they are ready to be reviewed, they will come into this workflow. You can filter through. So if you're only working, somebody who's only working SAP, or you only want to see SAPs, or you only want to see certain PJs, you can filter through them, or leave it at all, and you'll get everyone that's in there. So you can get next approval, which is still the first in, first out, or you can view all and filter through it that way as well. So it's really nice that your verification documents and your appeals documents are not going into the same workflow. They're going into different workflows to kind of help you separate that. There are just SAP users that you can assign, or just PJ users. So if they are just those users, they will only see this box in the workflow. Now, if you do come in and you sign in, you don't see all these workflows when you sign in. It's because of your permissions. So based off of what you are allowed and what permissions were given to you is going to be based on what you see when you log in. Other documents review. So if you are a school that's using other documents, so we helped you out with maybe a special document that you use that no other institutions use, it would go into this document review. You are also able to search by aid year in the workflow. So if you're working 2 different aid years, you can do that here and go to 1819 or 1920. You can also come up here and search for student by first name, last name, or student ID, and it will pull up the student for you. So schools just use these workflows differently. So if you're a school where you have someone who only reviews documents, they will use a document review flow. The person that is completing verification will use the file review workflow. And if you are a school where one person is completing everything, you mainly will be using this file review flow. So let's go ahead and pull up a student. We're going to pull up Dante Extra. Now we did pull up a student that was not created. This is also a student who was not created, but we pulled up one in our last call, in the student experience call. So we're going to go over this just really quick, just to show you what a student looks like who has not created an account. As you can see, there's a little bit more functionality on the left-hand side. With the help desk user, they do not have access to this verification, appeals, and other documents. This is blank. If you recall, there was nothing here. But here you can tell there was no student count created. You can see we can't pull up those transactions because no transactions or no tasks are assigned to a student until they have created an account. So let's say that you are a school and you you already know the student situation. You know they're a unique student, you know you've had some issues with them in the past, or maybe it's a different type of situation, but you want to add additional tasks and request additional documentation from that student. So Dante Extra is that student. They have not created their account, and I want to see what those tasks look like. So what we'll do is we're going to come in here and we're going to request a transaction. And I want to request the 1920 transaction. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit create. By creating these transactions, now we're going to be able to see everything that the student was selected for. So if they were selected for V groups or maybe just C codes, we'll see what those tasks populate. So now we have this transaction type that came up. We can click on verification. And we see that the only task the student has is selective service. So I know the student, and I'm going to need to document or request some documents, additional documents, and so now I can do so because the tasks have been opened. So you can always come back in here, and we'll show you how to request additional documents a little later, but I did want to show you how you can request a transaction for a student who has not created an account. Now let's say the student was not selected for verification at all, federally selected I should say. What you can do is you can also request verification, manually request it. You can select the aid year, select the V group, and then you need to enter a reason as to why you're selecting the student. Once you hit complete, depending on the V group that you selected, all those tasks, same tasks as if they were federally selected, will open the same when you manually select them. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of that because they've already been selected for verification, so it won't let me do it twice. But that is a way that you can manually select them for verification. Now, one thing to remember, this student does not have an account, so there's no communication going to the student. So if you do manually select the student for verification, you will, as the institution, need to send that initial communication to the student, letting them know they need to come into student forums, create an account, and that there's tasks available for them. So also here, we have the appeals. So if you recall in our student experience phone call webinar that we had, on the student side, we were able to see how the student can request. Now that's an option within the settings, so you can have that open for the students, or you can choose not to have that at all available for the students. If you do choose, you can have both actually. So, but if you're a school who chooses not to let the student request a SAP or a PJ on their own, this is where you can come in as an administrator and select request a SAP or request a PJ. For a PJ, you'll select what type of PJ that you're selecting them for, and then what that will do is it'll create another transaction type. Actually, let's do one right now. We'll request a PJ. We're going to do 1920. It does involve a financial change. Now, all these settings and these different things, these are customizable, so that's why it's definitely, I definitely encourage you to click on the SAP and PJ training. But let's say it's my medical and education expenses. We'll type in something here. You can type in anything here, any reason you want whatsoever. We'll complete. We're going to confirm. And we successfully created a PJ EFC appeal. Now, if we go down here, you can see there's two different transaction types. Now we have a verification, and now we have family contribution appeal. We're not going to get into that because we do have a separate training for that, but I did want to show you how you can do that here. And then request document, if you do have those unique documents that we've created for you, or you discussed already with your CSM, you would request those in these other documents. All right. We will get into some of this other stuff as well, but we're going to do it with a different student. So we are going to go into here we go, Stanley student side. Now, we'll go over some of this and we'll go over it in detail. So we have the name of the student, we have the last four of the social security number, we have the student ID, the email address associated with that student, their date of birth, their telephone number, we have their transaction types. So you can see this one just has verification. We have all of available ICERs. So these are always available for you. If you want to see exactly what the ICER looks like, you don't have to go anywhere else. You can just pull it up from here, and it shows you the ICER, so you can view it. Now, we also have this Compare ICER tool, which is a really great tool. I wish I had it when I was in the financial aid office. Let me show you how that works. You can select up to 4 different ICERs to compare at a time. So we do have a couple in here, so we'll select ICER with transaction number 1 and ICER 1920 ICER with transaction number 2. Now, if we scroll down, now we can see all the different fields associated with that ICER and kind of compare them side by side to see maybe what's changed from 8-year to 8-year or from transaction number to transaction number. If you wanted to add another one, you can there, but there's no available one, so it won't let me, but you can add up to 4 and kind of view it from here. Now, let's just say there's still a lot of fields here. I don't want to go through all this. Is there any other way that's easier to look through? Maybe things that have changed from this transaction to transaction. If you come up here and you click on only display discrepancies, what it's going to do is it's only going to show you what's changed from transaction 1 to transaction 2, or from ADR to ADR. So as you can see, we have the AGI that's changed. We have the income tax paid changed, income earned from work has changed, and the number of family members have changed. So we can see all the information that's changed here. Now we all know we have those few students who have many transactions for one particular ADR. You can kind of pull up all four, well not kind of, but you can pull up all four, the last four. You can kind of see what's going on. I know that this has been used to detect some fraud, so if you see that the AGI just keeps going up and down, it might be an indicator that they're trying to manipulate the system, or they're trying to see how they can become Pell eligible. So there's ways to look through that. Maybe you want to request some additional documentation for students who are doing that. Maybe you don't, depending on your policies. Just something that you can look for with this tool. It's very helpful. So I'm going to go back and click on this. We do have the profile settings, so depending on if you're direct sign-on or SSO sign-on will depend on what you can and cannot change here. But we did go over this in the student webinar. We have access to that, so we'll go ahead and return here. So for direct sign-on schools, if a student calls in and they've locked themselves out of student forums, this is where you can unlock it. So this button right here would be highlighted. You can click on it, and then you can tell the student, go ahead and try logging in again, or help them reset their password. For single sign-on students, this is you will need to contact your IT in order to get them unlocked if they're locked out of the system. This is where you will see the student parent users. So once the parent has completed and created an account, you will see their information here, so you can kind of tell who's signed that verification worksheet. You can also deactivate. We deactivated an account on the student webinar. Very easy, so this will stop all communications that are going to the student. So if a student calls in and say, I'm no longer attending your institution, please stop sending me notifications or communications. You can deactivate the student. That'll stop all the communications that are coming out through student forums. And if you accidentally deactivate the student, it's really easy to reactivate it. You'll just click on the button again, and it'll reactivate them. Then we have the account activity and the communication activities. So we have all the documents here that have been completed. We have when the student logged in. We have when they submitted certain tasks. We have everything that the student has done within the account. We also have the communication activity that shows all communications that have been sent out to the student. You can click on the type and it'll give you exactly what that message was. Now, if you remember from the student experience webinar that the student also has access to both account activity and communication activity. So let's go into verification. Now this all stays the same, so this won't change right here, but we do have some new information here. So we have transaction, we have the 2019-2020 transaction 1. Now this, just so you are aware, this transaction 1 does not have anything to do with ICE or transaction 1. Student forms will always verify off of the latest transaction. So currently we're verifying off of transaction 2. This has to deal with when you're switching through maybe ADR to ADR, it lets you know what transaction you're on. We have the status. So right now we're currently in collecting documents. We have when the account was created on. So we have January 7, 2019. And you also have to view current ICER. So you can always see what ICER we're doing verification off of. You can click on that and it'll pull up that ICER for you so that you can view. We have the student and parent IRS DRT code and IRS display flag, so that'll be here. We have dependency status, so we have I for independent and D for dependent. We have the V group, which is V5. We have their comment codes. So we have a list of them here. If you don't know what they are, you can click on that. It'll give you a brief description of what they all are, so you know. And then we have the most current EFC. If we scroll down here, this is where we have the student view side. So we will see everything that the student is seeing. We can see what they've uploaded, what they need to upload. Looks like the student did have the statement of educational purpose. So let's say they're in your office right now. What do we do? So we do have a couple of options. We can waive this task. You also have the option to waive steps within a task. Now, these options are presented to you because we want you to have access and control to do how you want on the student's file, whatever you want on the student's file. But I wouldn't recommend just going in and waiving tasks and waiving steps unless you're instructed to by your leadership team, unless you have a policy around this. Whatever the case is, make sure that you are getting permission and you're just not waiving things. We just allow you the option to do what you please on a student's account. But this is where you would upload the statement of educational purpose for that student. So if we come in here, we will click on upload. And if you recall in our student experience webinar, it's going to work the same way as uploading those documents. So here we have the statement of educational purpose. You can see everything's been filled out. We have our signatures. We have our copy of an ID. We are all good to go. So we're going to go ahead and use this. We're not going to add any additional pages. And now we have the submit button. So we can, and you are able to submit on behalf of the student since you've already received it, and you can finish this file for them as well, so that all the communications that are attached with this file are stopped because everything is complete. We have that nice congratulations screen. So now we're going to go into file review. We're going to scroll down. All this will stay the same. But now you can see we have all the files that the student has submitted. So we're going to go ahead and review these files. So we are going to go into the 1920 independent verification worksheet. We're able to review the information, make sure it's not blurry, make sure everything looks good. We do have a signature. If you ever come in here and you don't see a signature and you're wondering why, try to take a look at your browser. Student Forms works best in Chrome. Sometimes in Firefox or even Internet Explorer, it doesn't show the signature for some reason. But if you use Chrome, that'll work the best. You won't have any issues if you use Chrome. Now you will have some document values here that are pre-populated for you. It is important that you make sure that everything on here is correct. So just kind of briefly review it, make sure everything looks good, everything matches up, and then once you do that, you have some options here. We are either going to complete, we're going to complete, meaning that everything's good to go. I am approving this document, it looks good. We can pend. If we pend the document, what that'll do is it'll remove it from the workflow. So if you recall when that get next file, if other people in your office are clicking on get next file and you have this pended, they are not going to come across Stanley Student. The reason for this is because it's giving you time to go and ask your questions, maybe do some research. Maybe you have to go to a leadership to get some clarification on something. And so it'll pend it so that someone who's working that workflow doesn't get it. And then once you figure out your answer, you'll need to come back in, manually look up the student, and then you can come back into this document and either complete or reject it. If we reject this document, we are going to see this box. It's going to ask for a reason. There's different reasons here. If you don't find one that suits what you're looking for, you can click on other. But let's say we are, not all the required information is missing. Now you have a box here that you can enter a message, and this message goes to the student. This is not for internal use, this is for the student. And the reason for this is so that you can give directions to what's needed. So I would be as detailed as possible. If you need them to add somebody to the work, to the form, if you need a specific document and they're submitting the wrong one, be detailed, because this message the student will see, and the more detailed you are, is the more likelihood you won't be doing the back and forth game where you're just trying to get the correct document or the correct information. So you will also see here, note the student will see exactly what you type. So make sure you are being professional. We'll go ahead and reject this so you can all see what that looks like. Now, as we're rejecting it, the system is sending out a communication to the student, letting them know that they need to log back into student forms because there is action that requires their attention. If we scroll back down here, we can see there is a red triangle with an exclamation mark, and here is your note. So now here the student will be able to read it, see exactly what you need, and complete those changes, sign the form, and then finish and submit the changes. Now you do have the option to recall it. Now this will only work if the student hasn't completed anything. So let's say it's been a day and you realize, okay, maybe that was right information and they don't need to do anything. You can recall it. And if you recall it, what that will do is it will send another communication to the student, letting them know there is nothing needed of them. And now you will be able to go along with completing your review. So we'll go ahead and complete that. We have this nice big green check mark letting us know that this has been reviewed, completed. We have the date reviewed. And just so you know here, if you click on the Stanley student side and we go down to account activity, we will see that I've uploaded a statement of educational purpose, I've rejected a document, I've recalled it, I completed it. So it's now showing all the information that I've been doing. So it'll show your name here under user. All right, so let's go into the statement of educational purpose. Now, not all of these document values will be pre-populated for you. So you can see here the green completed button is highlighted gray. So in order to get that to highlight green, you'll have to complete this. So let's go. One. So now it is complete, highlighted green. So now we can complete this. As we approve it. Now you can see if you ever come into your either clicking get next file or you just come into a student's account and you see here that you're in file review and you have those two check marks. This means that somebody may have gone through document review and reviewed these two documents because they were maybe the first two that were submitted, and we're still waiting for either 3 more or these 3 are only needing to be reviewed. So because you see these green check marks doesn't mean that you can't go in there and re-review them. You still can. You still can reject them. You can still do anything as long as the file is not completed entirely. You can still look at them. So just so you know, that's what it'll look like if you ever come into a file that's partially reviewed. Let's go to proof of high school completion and take a look at this diploma. All right. I don't want to stretch my neck, so let's go ahead and there we go. All right, this looks good. Let's go ahead and enter some information here. And this is a high school diploma. All right, we're all good. We're going ahead and complete. Go into selective service registration. All right, that looks good. It has their name. Don't need anything further from them. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And let's take a look at the tax transcript. Now we do have on the left-hand side for document values what is called an OCR, and what that does is it will read the tax transcript and only the tax transcript. So if someone submits a 1040 or anything like that, this will not read, and you will have to either reject it and get the correct one, or if you're accepting the 1040s, you'll accept that. But there will be some information here that you'll need to submit. Just also review it, make sure everything looks good. If something doesn't look good, it will highlight red. If it's not reading the tax transcript, it's usually because it's blurry or the tax transcript is not in order. So they might have uploaded through their telephone, page 7, 6, 5, 3. It's completely out of order, so it won't read it. But as you can see here, everything looks filled in, but my completed button is still highlighted gray. What is going on? There is here one question that looks like it's answered, but it's still requiring your attention. Right, it looks like we answered everything now, so now it's highlighted green. So we'll go ahead and complete that. All right, now we have all our documents are reviewed, they're completed, they're approved. That was really simple, really easy to reject if need be. So everything looks really, really good. So now we're going to scroll down here a little bit and see some more functions. So we see delete documents. So if we do give you the option to delete documents out of here. We do recommend that the only reason that you use delete documents is if you upload information for a different student. So if it's wrong student information that you uploaded in here, you can delete it out. But anything else, we ask that you don't really delete because there's no purpose for it. And the reason for that as well is if you do end up deleting something and then realize that you did need it, there's no way that we can get that document back. You will need to re-request that information from the student in order to get that document back. So just be careful with the delete documents. We also have reporting for delete documents. So anytime you delete a document, your leadership can pull a report to see what documents have been deleted and the reasons for that. So you want to make sure that you're just not using that if you don't need to. Here is where you can request additional information. So if you remember for that student that did not create an account, let's say you were wanting to add new tasks to that student, you can do so here by clicking on request information. And we have lots and lots of different tasks in here that you can choose from in order to add to the student's account. Most of these are upload links, but give like descriptions of things, so like driver's license, passport, things like that. I will show you one. So let's say you have a student that added a cousin on the verification worksheet and said that they support them more than 50% of the time, and you want to verify that. You need additional documentation. So let's do, you can type in a word and it'll pull up any task associated with that word. So we'll click on support. You can see we have all these. And here we have a proof of support. So let's add that. And let's say, here's another way that you can just make sure that you're getting the correct documentation. So let's say if you need core documentation or there's something specific that you're requesting as an institution, I would enter that here. save and close, and then save and close again. All right, so if we go to the student side, we will see that now we have an additional task. If you ever come into a student's account and you go to the student view and you see a task that says additional info, this means that someone in your office has added this task to the student's account. So we click on the drop screen, we see our note here, and then we have an upload button so that they can upload that documentation for you. Now there are some web forms in there that you can use, but most of those additional documentation requests are upload links like this. So if you want, you can waive the task if you no longer need this. And just so you know too, when we requested this task, we also sent out a communication to the student letting them know there's additional information that needs their attention and they need to come back into student forums. You can also come back in here to delete that task by going back to the task you were looking at, and you can delete request. So remember, you have that last step of save and close. Okay. So if you did that, there's also another communication going out to the student letting them know that there's nothing further that they need to do. They're all good to go. They don't need to come back into student forums, and that task is removed. So that's the way you can request additional documentation. There are some generic ones in there, so if you are not seeing what you need, you can write that note and request additional documentation that way, and then just write exactly what you need, and it'll give just like a blank, pretty much a blank task, just with your note on there, letting them know what documentation you need. If you are using something that you use a lot, let us know. We can talk about different options for you, possibly adding one in there or going a different route. But definitely talk to either your leadership or your CSM if you have direct contact with them to discuss options. All right, so as we come down, we are going to go into Smart File Review versus Full File Review and the difference. So this is where you're going to be doing corrections within the system. So where you're going to be working a lot with. You can see I have a big red box here under Smart File Review. And what this box is doing is it is basically giving us a warning, letting us know. I know it looks a little bit scary because it's red, bright red, but it basically wants you to know that there's some discrepant information, and it's up to you as to what you would like to do with it. So this won't hinder you from doing anything, but it just basically will let you know. So is the student married? It says yes, yes, so that all matches. Have children you support? No, no, that matches. Dependents other than children, household form says no, FAFSA says yes. So there's some discrepant information. So there's a couple of ways you can choose to do this. You can make an ICER correction. You can also go back in and reject the form and have them add the other dependents onto the verification worksheet. So lots of different ways what you can do there. You can also view the household form if you need to. You can click that and it'll show you. We'll go ahead and exit out of that. All right. And then we're going to look into Smart File Review. All right, so Smart File Review contains all of the ICER fields that are related to verification or C code resolution, and Full File Review contains all of the ICER fields. So if you need to make corrections to other information like grade level or dependency questions, you can do that in Full File Review. Once you complete both Full File and Smart File Review, you would create one correction file for all of your corrections. So let's go down here in Smart File Review and look at the different columns. So we have the ICER fields. This contains all ICER fields that are part of verification and C code resolution. We have the ICER value. This is the value from the current ICER. We have the document value. Those are the values that were entered during document review. So that's why it's also important to make sure that on that right-hand side, when you're going through each document, that all that information is correct. Even if it's pre-populated, you're making sure that it's correct. Then we have the document type. That is where the document values come from. So you may see this, you may see a multiple documents link right here. If you click on it, it will show you where it came from. So you can see student's first name, comes from proof of high school completion, and so forth. And then we have the status. So this compares the document value to the ISER value. So if they match, it will default to match, as you see here. If they do not match, it will default to ISER correction. But there are different statuses. Sometimes this might be blank, and if you do see this blank, most of the time you will see a multiple documents indicator, which means that there's some discrepant information that's going on and it needs your attention. So if we go down here, we see we have a little drop down here, and we have match, ISER correction, and ignored. So match means that it's matching across the board through ISER value and document value. Everything's matching, everything looks good. ISER correction, what this means is that it's taking the document value to be true, and it wants to ignore the ISER value. So it's going to make an ISER correction. If you click on ignored, what that's going to do is it's going to ignore the document value, and it's going to say, I want the ISER value to be true. So whatever I put on the document value, if this was different, ignore it because the ISER value is the correct. So as you're going through this, you just want to make sure that everything's either matching, or if you're making a correction, or if you're just ignoring it because you want the ISER value to be true, you do have to make sure everything is answered in order for this to be highlighted green. If we go into the full file review, this is where you'll be able to filter through all the different types of ISER fields. You can go through each section, click on dependency status, different things like that, and look here. So let's say we want to make a correction. Have children use support. We want to change that to a yes. Let's click on this little pencil here. And let's click on yes, confirm it, and then we're going to approve it. So now we just made a ISER correction for have children use support. It's going to go from a no to a yes. Let's say you made a mistake, that's not what you wanted, you haven't completed the file yet, so we can go ahead and delete that and it'll go back to normal, so you can still go through that, but you can filter through each section of it and make additional corrections. Smart File Review is the minimum requirements that the Department of Education wants you to look at. Anything beyond that will be in Full File Review. So now that we've completed, we are going to hit Complete Review. Everything looks good, everything's done. I've made my corrections, all my files have been reviewed and approved. So now I hit Complete Review, but we do have an additional step because this student is a V4, V5 student, and it wants to ask some additional questions. So for 1920, it's going to ask how this was completed. So we can say verification completed remotely, no issues found, it's good. We're going to save that. We're going to stay here for a minute. And the reason for the V4, V5 question is because there is some reporting that your office needs to do and needs to submit to the Department of Education. So we do have reports that we'll show you a little later on that you can pull all the V4, V5 statuses. You can export them into a nice report, and it's you can use that report to submit directly to the Department of Education. One last thing I want to show you on this file is this admin override button. Now, depending on your permissions that were given to you, you may not see this admin override button, but what this is it will override the whole file and open it back up. So for any reason at all, you need this file to be reopened once you have completed the review. You will need to talk to your leadership or find someone that you know who has admin override access to come in here and hit this button so that it opens up the file for you. So that's just important to know if you ever need to reopen a file. All right. We are going to go to one more student here. We're going to go to Edmund Red Boxes. So we're going to show you a couple of red boxes, one that you have already seen. Here we go. So the first one that we are looking at is the AGI calculation box. And the AGI calculation box appears when the student indicates in their verification form that they are married and one person filed taxes and the other person was not required to file taxes but had income earned from work. So if we click on this, this will also appear, so it's the same box for the parents of dependent students as well. So to ask, and it wants you to select who is the tax filer. So here we're going to select the student. We're going to save. And now you can see it turned a yellow. So it wanted you to choose who was the tax filer and who was not. So if you see that, that's exactly what you'll see. You just click on the button and it'll give you those options, and you'll be able to move on. And then here, like I said prior, this is just the discrepancy box. It'll show you what's discrepant, and it's up to you as a school whether you want to change that information, if you'd like to move forward, how you want to handle that. Maybe you need to go back in and reject the document back to the student, or maybe you did something wrong during file review that you need to go back in and fix. So this won't hinder you from doing anything, but it does want you to take a look that there is some discrepant information. All right, so we'll complete that again. No issues found. We'll save it. And this time we'll go ahead and leave the page. So that was pretty simple. That was going through a couple of students, kind of looking at what errors you might see, what red boxes you might see, what discrepancies you may see. If you see anything else come up, reach out to your CSM, open up a ticket. The best way actually is to open up a ticket prior to reaching out to your CSM, because all of our CSMs on our floor will be working those tickets. You'll be able to get a resolution faster. So opening up the ticket is definitely the way to go. So I hope you're happy with what you're seeing. Hope it looks easier. I know that I came from an office that was very manual in its processes, and I had to do a lot of things through paper. And now with this software, it does everything for you. It goes and helps you review those documents, helps the student submit things easier. Communication is easier. So definitely a great tool to utilize. One thing we are going to go into is reports really quick, and this will show you different things here. So we have transaction aging and transaction status aging. This will show you, 18, 19, 19, 20. You can flip between the two. It'll show you how long the transaction has been aging and what days. So 0 to 6 days, 7 to 13 days. So it'll show you here. And if you click on that, it'll also, I lied, it just gives you the 8-year. Here, it'll give you the transaction aging status, so how many days they've been in collection status, review status, recollect, correction. Here you want to make sure if it goes past 21 days, there may be an issue with corrections. Maybe that subsequent ICER hasn't come back in. If you're an integrated school, there might be something on the integration side that we need to go back in and look. As a CSM, we are going in here and looking at different transactions and making sure that everything's going smoothly. And if something is not, we will reach out to you too. But it is also good for you to be looking out for these things as well. Here you can kind of export this information as well, confirm it, and it'll go directly to your email and give you a report. So if you want to see that, and what students are in this status, or even what students are in the correction status. You can do so there. We have transaction activity. Then here we have data export. So here is where you can come in and go through these different reports. Now you might not have all these reports, again, depending on your access. Admins will have access to all of these. But here is you can do an identity verification results for V4, V5, or unresolved identity verification. So if you want to see the two, you can do so here. But if we click on this report, we can select an award year, select 1920. Let's do a date range. So we can do from 01/01/2019 to 01/08/2019, and it's going to pull everyone with the results for V4, V5. Let's say you only want certain outcomes. So I can click on these. I don't want that. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see whatever you don't want, or maybe you do want to see them all. You can do that. You'll click submit. And once you hit submit, what that'll do is it's going to take and generate all that information and send it to an email. And it's going to send it to you in the format that you can submit to the Department of Education. So you can turn it into a CSV file and submit that. So it's really super easy. I know a lot of schools have do a lot of work to get this information, and now it's all here at your fingertips. You can also do the unresolved. So if you need to see who hasn't been resolved yet, you can do so here. FAO activity, you can enter a date range, and it'll show you how many files FAOs are doing, your staff is doing. It'll show you who's been working hard, who hasn't been, lots of information there. We have the deleted students documents. So that was what I was talking about. Anytime you delete something off of a student's account, you can pull a report. Your leadership can pull a report to see why that document was deleted. You have student ICERs. If you want to see different student ICERs, you can here, or pull student ICERs. We have outstanding student documents. So maybe you have to do some additional outreach for students who are just not answering their emails or their text messaging. So you might have to do some phone calls. You can pull a report here to see which documents are still needed or what tasks are still needed. So you either have a document or the tasks that are still open. You might need to do some additional research. Maybe this might be an indicator that you need to do some more communications. There is a setting that will let you determine how many communications that you want sent out to students if they have open tasks or outstanding documents. So maybe you only have a little bit and you need to up that. That'll tell you here that you need to communicate a little bit more. We have the appeals. So this is a nice one too. You can select, all, or maybe you just wanted to look at SAP appeals. The outcomes, I only want approved ones. Award year, I just want 1920, and tracking group. So this is when you are requesting a SAP, it will ask you for a tracking group. Now, you don't have to enter anything significant in there if you don't want to track them, but this is basically just for reporting issues. So let's say you did Q1 SAP. Now you will only pull the SAP appeals that were approved for 1920 for Q1 SAP instead of all quarters or all semesters, however you want to label that. And then you can give a date range, and it'll pull that report to you in your email. These all go directly to your email. We have the verification group change, so this will tell you if it's changed, if any students have changed from maybe like a V1 to a V5, you have that report. User account creation, so if you are sending out these initial communications to students, letting them know that they do need to sign into student forms and they do need to create an account, you can come in here and see who has created an account and who hasn't. And those who have not created an account, maybe you have to do a second outreach to them to let them know to create their accounts within student forms. You can use this report to do so. We have our privacy policy opt out. So if they did opt out, you can see who's done that here. We have our California ICER correction. So if you are a California school, we have that here. And we have our 400/401 status report. So lots of reporting in here for you to use and help you out. If you have any issues with these, have any questions, need some additional details, reach out to your CSM. They will be able to help you out with that. All right, so that concludes the administrative training. Um, Last thing I do want to go over is support. Once again, we are here to support you in any way possible. We do have our support tickets. That's going to be the best way. Instead of emailing directly to your CSM, once you're live, start using the ticketing system because you will be able to get quicker responses. We'll be able to track them to make sure if you have an issue that popped up maybe once or twice, we'll be able to track that for you within our ticketing system so that we know, okay, this is an issue, we need to do something else for you. So it's just an easier way to help us track and help you better. So definitely utilize the ticketing system when you do have issues. So we have that at support@campuslogic.com, or you can call into our support line at 602-643-1380. Now, also disclaimer, and I can't stress this enough, this support information is only for your school and your financial aid office. Please do not give this information to your students or to parents, because if we do have them call in, we will redirect them to your financial aid office. Once again, can't stress it enough, please do not give our support information to your students or to their parents. We will, like I said, support you in any way possible, help you out, help you get the right answers, help you make right decisions. So definitely let us know. If you do have questions, please reach out to your CSM, and you can ask any questions from either the admin training or the student experience training. I hope you enjoyed the training today. I hope you learned new things and you're excited. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.